Let that counter come up. It's slow. Make sure we're live before we really engage.
Yeah.
Oh, we got some people in here already.
Oh, fantastic.
Still waiting on the counter.
Okay.
Slow internet here. Okay, now it's clicking away. All right, here we go. We'll do it live. We got a good one for you today. Welcome, Jason Radak, to the show, 4 o'clock shadow.
Thank you for having me.
720. Been doing it a while.
Yeah.
Now you're not just a comic creator. I'm glad to see you're over on Fun My Comic with me, my brother. Wonder Twin Powers Activate. Form of a bestseller.
Yeah. I hear you.
Now you're into Lovecraftian stuff though, as well, right? Real Lovecraftian type horror writing.
It's been a huge influence on my writing, on my reading habits. A few years ago, I went to a Necronomicon conference in Providence, and I think before then I had thought of Lovecraft as a guilty pleasure, because mainstream thought on Lovecraft is that is very pulpy. It's purple prose. It's trash basically. And I think it was only when I went to Necronomicon a bunch of years ago and I saw people treated the literature seriously as something worthy of being studied and discussed. And so then, my interest in Lovecraft just, exploded all the much more. And so I've written a lot of horror stories or weird fiction stories, and they tend to be Lovecraftian, dealing with protagonists who unfortunately have interstellar ominous beings interfering in their lives. And so Lovecraft has been a huge influence on my.
Now, do you do that under your own banner, or do you have a publisher, or have you done both?
This comic book, Interplanet, is my first attempt to publish myself. So
you previously been with other publishers,
right? Yeah, I write a story, send it off to a dozen horror magazines, and get a dozen rejections generally.
Right. Welcome to the show, my co-host Shadowhawk.
Hello guys, nice to meet you, Jason. Howdy.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Jason, might I ask where you were at in the country, or in the witness protection program, or maybe an aisle away from home or somewhere?
I did used to live in New Mexico, and that's where you will find some witness protection people. But I now live in Philadelphia. I've been here for almost 20 years.
Okay. All right. Yeah. The Philadelphia's got a lot of history. I guess you did the tour when you first got there, maybe, of some of the ancient sites, right? Of the founding of the country, and
for sure. Yeah, I mean that takes a
You're not that far away from Washington. I guess you went to Washington and seen a lot of that, right? What our tax money has kind of spent our money on.
Sure. I went to Yeah, went to Washington a couple times as a kid. Went once since we moved to Philadelphia. That was mostly to see the Phillies play.
Yeah.
Went to the Smithsonian, which is probably the most visited thing.
Yeah.
Most people go to Washington. Right. I wouldn't be surprised if they go to that.
Did you see the big hanging well? That's always depicted.
When I think of a hanging whale, I think of the Museum of Natural History in New York. Oh, I've seen that. Right. If there's one in Washington, I haven't seen that one that I remember.
All right. Well, I got mixed up. My museum's mixed up. So.
Yeah, that's one of those things they tell you all your life. The blue whale is the biggest creature that's ever lived on Earth, and then you go to the Museum of Natural History as a little kid, and it doesn't seem that big.
Yeah.
Like that's bigger than a brontosaurus or anything else.
Right. Yeah, or some of those long-necked bronto-like that's been found down in South America that actually bigger than the brontosaurus, in size. It's like moving houses or moving football fields. Tree Goblin in the house. Hey, Tree Goblin.
Hey, Pete.
So what is your company name that you went under, Jason? Hey, Kate and Carrie.
Oi, ladies.
You mean am I publishing my comic book?
Yeah, you're it's like I'm Momentum Comics. What are you kind of done?
Oh, right. I'm thinking of going under Rad Books.
Okay. All right.
And as also a prose writer, wanted to call books because I would like to try self-publishing some of my stories and stuff next after Interplanet comes out. So I think Rad Books sounds kind of cool.
Well, like Doc Blaylock, is releasing his comics Friday, and he actually has about a 90-page novel to go with it. I think there's a place for that in crowdfunding. I think people want a good story. They want to know that you are a good writer, and that's a good way to do it. I've considered it myself and just haven't found the time in doing all the little short stories and development and working with other artists. I just haven't found the time really to write a whole novel, but I think I could sit down and definitely do one. And I'm hoping that other comic book creators will do that. I know Shadowhawk has backed some that have had novels with them, haven't they?
Yeah, B.A. Turner recently put out 2 novels, and actually getting ready to put out the comic book later. But the novels were great. It's a great story. I'm looking forward to the book. So I think it can definitely work, Jason.
Well, that's Carrie great to know.
Brad seems a popular name in comics or something. I think that's what it or maybe she's talking about your name, Jason.
Make sure nobody's using that yet.
Yeah.
Right.
How did you find Fund My Comic? Because a lot of people don't know about Fund My Comic.
I don't remember exactly how I first heard about it, but for months now, I've been trying to immerse myself in the indie comic world as much as possible, following anyone, even remotely connected to the indie comic scene on Twitter and what have you. And so, I heard about Fund My Comic somewhere along the way, interacting with comic book creators and whatnot.
Yeah. Been a pretty good experience for you so far?
Yeah. I Fund My Comic being, I think, the smallest platform, the most recently created. I think I just respond to the new guy on the block, so I figured I'd go with that. And I'm very pleased with the reception so far.
Now, are you in the final 2 weeks, 14 days left to go on this, or is there additional days, or are you going to go on storefront? So are there in-demand feature?
Right. I think I will do that. Yeah. 14 days left of the campaign. And then I don't see why not have it be as a storefront kind of situation. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my own book kind of went in demand. So you launched like April 8th. and it runs to like roughly May 1st coming up here.
Yep.
25 backers, $339. Your goal, very modest goal of $100. 339% there. You got to love that, especially you probably ninja launched this, right? Just started it with no fanfare or anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Wanted to keep those numbers low so they look good, 339%. That looks great.
Yeah.
I got that, that bar was all the way green very quickly. So
now are you doing now you're doing the writing, but who's your art team and everything? Is that you? Is that what?
No, I am not a good artist.
Okay. Just your
I
stick
got
figure.
Yeah.
Right.
I wish I took it seriously as a kid. I mean, I had some ability as a kid, but the idea of training and going to school and stuff, that wasn't really my mindset. So I got put in touch with an artist named Alan Otero, who I was very surprised, very pleasantly surprised. He agreed to do the pencils and inks. And then a bit later, I contacted Leonardo Pacioretty to do the colors. And as you could see, they did a fantastic job.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a wonderful job. Let's take a look at your trailer, and I apologize ahead of time for the choppiness, but we have something for that. Okay, all right, here we go. Interplanet. Now, I keep wanting to say interplanetary, so if I do, I apologize. But planet number 1. Now, we looked at this yesterday. This is very Vincent Price type music, almost like Hammer horror music. I love it. And these headers here, this font, this reminds me of like 90s, I don't know, 90s type, something they would have done in the 90s on some TV shows and stuff.
Right.
So tell us about Interplanet that you've come up with here. How you kind of came up with, I'm going to do a comic and get into the comic scene and just the whole kind of your 30-second spiel on what the book's about.
Sure. So yeah, after years and years of writing a lot of short stories and dealing with mostly rejection, I mean, some acceptances, but almost all in very small markets, I was getting a little bit down on the whole writing process. And I saw artists and writers, comic book creators having success in the independent comic book field. And admittedly, I don't read a huge amount of comics anymore, but in the 80s, early 90s, I was a huge comic book fan. I mean,
yeah. Were you big into the Image thing? And I want to know, where is this man? What have you done with the real Jason Radak?
I joined Twitter probably like around 2010. That picture is probably from about then.
Okay.
And yeah, never
that
bothered
looks like you're
updating
at
it.
a Phillies game, you know?
Yeah. It's an old picture. It's
Yeah.
actually the Albuquerque Dukes, and I never saw a reason to change that. So
I don't either. I was just, I couldn't help but bust you over that. It's like, wow, man, he looks different from even on Fund My Comic. Of course, you're wearing a
yeah,
hat, and everything.
yeah.
Time keeps
Time's
on
rough.
clicking, doesn't it?
It sure does. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I'm
So
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were talking
not at
about
all.
how the kind of your comic came about and why your reasons for writing it, and wanted to do something different from your novelizations.
Yeah. I thought, well, why don't I try writing a comic book? And the last story I had written came, very hard. It was like every sentence was a chore to write. And then when I went to my writers group, they didn't really like it. They didn't understand it. And so I was kind of just sad and depressed about that, spending so much time on this story and it didn't work. And I thought I'd try writing a comic book. And that the story for Interplanet flowed very easily. I just thought, what am I really into now? Because I was maybe not as much into H.P. Lovecraft as I had been at one time. I just kind of moved on to other things. And I thought, well, I really like spy fiction. I like 70s conspiracy thrillers. I thought, well, why don't I channel that type of storytelling into a comic book? And since it's a comic book, you got to take advantage of that medium. So have it be science fiction and also let it be fantasy. So in the plot, in the storyline, there's a science fiction planet and a fantasy planet, and just try to incorporate all this into a story of sort of a retelling of the Cold War of between the United States and Russia, but transplant it to this world, this solar system of two planets, very different, kind of locked in hostilities. When the book begins, it's a Cold War, but the idea of it going hot, the possibility of it going hot is always there.
Yeah. Now, do you have a YouTube channel, Jason, that people can visit, or that?
No, I mean I do, but I am not a YouTuber. I'm not a streamer.
You're not active, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I wish I was. I mean, I really admire people who can get on and talk and do a stream, and it's cool, but I don't think that's part of my skill set, unfortunately.
Right. Now how do you approach writing? I mean, do you I do a lot of thinking.
Yeah,
and you kind of have to foster the environment for that, right? But you churn a lot of things over in your mind. I don't know. Maybe you just start writing and, whether it's gibberish or what. I mean, there's different approaches, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Whatever works. And I'm sure I've done different approaches on different stories. You get a spark, some idea that just captures your imagination. Maybe you turn it over in your head for as long as you need to, and then I'll start. I like using bullet points, and I'll just make a list of bullet points of stuff that should happen in the story, and you do that until you feel brave enough to write that first sentence, and go from there. Just try to just put as many ideas down.
I mean, sometimes it's just draft. Like a good premise for a book, right? It's just, sometimes you just get a good premise for a good idea, and then you just have to flesh out the characters, right? It's all about characterization, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if the reader doesn't care about the characters, they're not going to be invested in what you're doing and enjoy
Definitely.
it, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's something I have to work on. I think the plot comes naturally to me, and the plot just flows. Mm-hmm. And so second draft, that's when you try to flesh out the characters, make them more relatable or more evil or whatever they need for, to improve the
Terry has a
story.
question. I always like to ask what comic inspired you to create your own. And I was going to ask you that too, was that you said your kind of jam was in the 80s and 90s growing up. And I know comics kind of made me a reader. I needed that visual stimulus.
Yeah.
And I know it's inspired my work. How is it? Is there a particular comic or comic series or something you can kind of point back to and say that kind of inspired me somewhat?
Yeah. I mean, more directly, I think I was reading a lot of, spy paperback novels, which I think was a more direct influence.
Like Ian
That was
Fleming's James Bond or something like that,
Ian
or
Fleming,
I guess
sure.
that's way back. Reacher and some other characters that are more contemporary, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing world of spy fiction that I'm just kind of dipping my toe into the last few years. So
that's
there's
pretty
a lot
big,
of great...
isn't it? That's pretty big,
huge.
isn't it? Yeah, like what was the movies? Help me out, Shadowhawk. The ones where he was like kick-ass spy.
Born Identity movie.
Born Identity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Reacher series, and I mean, and even going way back to The Firm, I think that's kind of like and he's from this area where I live. I'm in Arkansas. He's up around Chicago. So
right, John Grisham.
Yeah, John Grisham. Yeah, he was actually married to one of our news people for a while here, daily news people. Jolly Green in the house. Hello. I bagged Jason's book, he says. So there you go.
Yes, he's been very supportive in every way. I've gotten some good advice from Jolly. Very supportive of.
Well, I might not have specifically. Yeah. Carrie's like, did you let him answer, Rex? I don't know. Did I let you answer? Was there a specific series or kind of books that kind of, or you were? Well, now, I mean, he did answer that. He was like more to the point. It was the spy stuff, right? That you've been reading of late.
I think, directly, yeah. But as a teenager, I was completely obsessed with Alan Moore. I mean,
really?
Every month as Watchmen was coming out, that was just such a huge deal.
Yeah.
And his other stories too. The ones that came out more or less concurrently.
The Swamp Thing
Swamp
stories.
Thing and Miracle Man.
Yeah.
And
Miracle Man was good.
And Watchmen, I think, overtly is a mystery. I mean, it's a murder mystery, and there's more to it than that. But I think it's got
this alien invasion type thing that you don't see in the movie because it just would make the movie too big and convoluted.
I was very I did enjoy the movie, but it broke my heart that I think Zack Snyder really copped out on the ending. I really wanted to see the giant alien squid and the utter destruction of Manhattan. That was just such a gut punch when that issue finally came out, and reading what finally happened after all these 11 issues of 9 panels per page, and then it's just splash page after splash page of destruction. It was made a big impression on me. And
now, were you a big Bond fan? You're talking about, were you a James Bond fan or?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, big lifetime James Bond fan. Love it. My dad took me for a day off, took me out of school to go see Moonraker when it came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He said, cool. Oh, it was, and I mean, I remember he said, I'm going to take you to see a James Bond movie, and I thought that sounded really lame. I mean, James Bond, what is that? And then it turned out to be like this sort of like a mini Star Wars movie. I couldn't believe it because, of course, Moonraker had spaceships and all kinds of stuff, and so
right.
So the James Bond
had the return character or villain of Jaws, who kind of becomes his friend at the end.
Of course, Yeah, to whatever I was, 5, 6
And
years old at the time. Yeah, Jaws is incredible, and just everything is amazing. So, and of course, as I get older, you appreciate the more serious takes on James Bond as well. And it's like Batman. You could have Adam West as Batman or Frank Miller take on Batman, and it all works, and it's all great. And James Bond is similar.
Yeah, like Roger Moore was a little bit more campy, maybe, I guess. And
I would say campy, yeah.
Yeah, and it like Sean Connery was very serious.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Connery is just great. I mean, that was just lightning in a bottle, the way he captured that character.
Yeah, I just watched.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Connery.
Her Majesty's
007.
Her Majesty's Secret Service. I just watched a thing on the actor that played Bond in that, and I didn't realize it, but he was offered a 6-movie deal as James Bond, and he kind of wanted Bond to grow his hair out and be a little bit more hip, and didn't want to be, perceived as a square, and really maybe it was his. I think it was a big mistake to his career not to have at least done one more, and I think he looks back on that and sees that. But they offered him 6. He could have been, he could have been solidified for all time,
Undoubtedly,
Lisenby, and I don't think that was it was more of a romance, which was a big departure. And if he would have signed on, the next one would have been him pursuing Blofeld, who killed his wife, which would have been the first cross, the two that were connected. It could have been a big deal, and he just, I don't know, for whatever reason. And he wasn't an actor. The thing of it was, he was a model down Australia.
Yeah,
he was Australian, but he had the chops to do the job. I think he had the looks.
He didn't want to commit to that long of a contract. I don't know.
Yeah, but I read somewhere that the Cold War was kind of easing up at that point in history, and someone advised him. I think maybe his agent said, "No one's going to care about this spy Cold War stuff, so." Get out while you can, because this James Bond stuff is a dead end. So,
who's your favorite Batman?
I was totally fire that guy.
Who's your favorite Batman? Carrie wants to know.
I guess I have to go with Adam West. I was obsessed with Batman as a kid, and let me grab something. So. Yeah, I mean, this is me.
Oh, wow.
And that is obviously based on Adam West.
Yeah.
And that's how I was all the time as a kid. I didn't usually have a costume quite that. Normally, it was just like a dish towel tucked into the back of my shirt, but I was running around protecting people, being Batman.
I remember doing that as a kid. I would watch Godzilla movies. I'd roll up a big old beach towel and stick it in the back of my pants, so I had a Godzilla tail.
Awesome.
To walk around.
I would just create it. No, I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah, we're actually playing with a hoop and a stick.
Oh man. We are having a special Apex After Dark. I had to say that before I forget. Tomorrow at 7 Central. It's not 7 Central. It's regular time, 8 o'clock with Bill Mouse, and that's because Apex has reached 700 subscribers. So,
congratulations!
He's dropping that on me, but he's giving me fair warning. And I've been on with Bill before. Now, remind me, Shadowhawk, what does Bill Mouse do? Which is his book?
Bill.
Do you remember?
Every time you do this, you put me on.
See, when I go to Mouse, when I hear Mouse, I think of Mouse the comic. That was about Auschwitz.
No, Bill is doing Zen in Intergalactic Ninja.
Is he?
Yeah, and then he's also doing Nira X. I think that's the one he's doing.
Oh yeah, that's what we talked about. Nira X. Yeah. And it crosses over with Ninja. Yeah.
And both of those books have been around since, God, like 91, 92, when they first debuted with, I think he was actually printing with Don Chin back then.
Now, did Image have a big impact on you, Jason, when when they were selling in the millions and everything? And
no, I pretty much missed out on that part of comic books history.
Yeah, because you said 80s, 90s,
right? But yeah, I really, it was really 1990. My family went through a rough patch. You know, collecting comic books is very expensive, and I just couldn't afford it. And I think I remember going to the comic book store, buying Elektra Lives Again by Frank Miller, nice hardcover graphic novel. And I think that was like the end of my comic book collecting career. It was like after that.
Did Scott McDaniel do the artwork to that? Was it like a 2 prestige format thing?
No, this was written and drawn by Frank Miller.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just like what the title says. Elektra is resurrected. It was a hardcover graphic novel. Yeah, you don't see it referred to a lot. I mean, I remember enjoying it, and a huge fan of Frank Miller's writing and artwork. So that's undoubtedly part of the reason why it really stuck in my mind, because I think that was like the last comic book I bought as a real serious comic book collector.
Did you get to see any of the Sin City stuff, Jason?
I saw the first movie. I mean, that was quite a while ago, and I mean, I
mean the comics.
I did read it here and there. Yeah, I mean, throughout the 90s, I read some comic books. I mean, yeah, Sin City never really struck a chord with me. I mean, I'd be willing to give it another chance.
I mean, I don't know if the stories were all that great. You know, maybe Frank's writing wasn't quite there yet on those, but what he was doing visually with some of the working black out of white and different things that he was doing, I just really enjoyed that stuff.
I should definitely revisit it. I recently read Born Again for the first time, I think since the 80s, and that might be my favorite comic book storyline of all time. I mean, he was firing on all cylinders on that one, man. That's a great story. Dave Mazzucchelli.
He also wrote some. I think it might have been for Avatar. I think he wrote some RoboCop. Frank Miller did stories.
Really, I didn't know that.
I don't know if you're aware of that, but he did. Yeah.
And then there was a run before that one too, Jason, on Daredevil. It was Klaus Janson with Frank Miller.
Yeah.
That was some good stuff too,
Yeah.
man.
I met Klaus Janson at a comic convention in New Jersey back in the 80s. That was cool. Small affair where you could go up. He was promoting Punisher at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, it was like the kind of deal where you'd get a free promotional poster, go up, have him sign it, chit chat a bit.
Nice.
That was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, of course, he's been involved in some of the great comic books. So.
Oh yeah, that is.
So you did do a few conventions back in the day.
Oh, big time. I mean, the best was like the one I was talking about. I forget if it had an entrance fee. It might have been a few bucks. And the comic books were all reasonably priced. So like when I discovered Swamp Thing, this was the place where you could go to get all the back issues and, get the whole story together. But I also have memories of going to these giant hotels in New York City and just a giant ballroom, several levels, just filled with comic book readers and vendors. It was really fantastic.
Well, it was different back then too. Now it's more about the new Netflix deal, the new IP, the new movie. It's more about celebrities and panels and less about the creators and the comics. And that's pretty sad, actually. I know it's all pop culture, but it's more about Funko Pops and merchandising and things, and all that should go hand in hand. But man, people like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and all these guys, I mean, they're going to be immortalized in, when it comes to comic fans, but it's sad. If you said Jack Kirby to most people, they don't know who it is. Steve Ditko, yeah. Stan Lee, even, yeah.
Wow.
And it's sad.
One of these big conventions in New York, I remember there was a panel with John Byrne and Dick Giordano on it. I think not to announce, but to celebrate the arrival of John Byrne at DC to start on Superman. And these people were like gods to me. It was incredible. Be in the same room. It's a a conference room of some sort, ballroom, whatever, just packed with fans to hear what these guys have to say. It was really amazing. I mean, we just idolize these people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of enamored when I first went up to Chicago and met some. I met some down in Memphis, because Memphis is about an hour away, and that's where all the conventions were then. And just getting started, actually. They had the very first couple in the Peabody, where they bring out the ducks. Well, I don't think we ever saw them bring out the ducks, but that's got an old tradition going back to the 30s, where they come down the elevator and the ducks come out and go to the fountain and everything.
That's cool.
Quite famous there in Memphis. And then, of course, you got Elvis and all the musical tradition, so it's a nice place, but it's dangerous to be around now. It's like the number one crime city in America, even after over LA,
Wow.
and Chicago. It's number one, or it was last year, and it would probably be this year too. They've driven it into the ground. They were fining people during the pandemic for not wearing a mask and being out.
Yeah.
They strictly enforced that. Very draconian, crack out whip type thing,
Right.
You want to be around there around that time. But
funny how if your local politicians are focused on things like that, those tend to be the places that are really overrun with crime now.
Yeah.
And drug use and that whole thing. I mean, I'm a teacher. My school is in the middle of like possibly the worst neighborhood for heroin in the country, according to some sources. So
wow.
It's
So now, I mean, you're a teacher, and I've been friends with the guy that taught for this year will be 40 years. We've known each other since college, and he taught for like 31 years in the public school system. And so I kind of lived my life vicariously through him, and I've taught some too, not in the public schools, but and dealt with picking up students and dropping them off and different things. And so I kind of know about what some are going through, with all the stuff. I mean, but now what did you teach, and was it in the public schools, or was it college, or what?
Yeah, I'm in a public school, elementary school teacher, special education.
God bless you. I mean, his last 2 years teaching, he had like a medically fragile guy, and one of the assistants actually broke his arm, the student's arm. He had one. I said, man, you got to take a hard stance on this. She should not have been in. She stripped naked and ran through the halls. She was something else. She needed special care, did not need to be in public school. She was an endangerment to other students and the teachers, really, with her antics. And yet the schools were like, no, we'll give you assistant. And, I could tell you some horror stories, and he could too. It's just, he had to put up with that the last couple of years, and it was pitiful. Because, I mean, they actually have students like that are very, very special needs that should not be put in a public setting like that. That's abusive, I think. Or even somebody that's medically fragile to the point, maybe. That's a little different. That's physical. That's not, she probably had like the mentality of a 6-year-old, if that. And that's very hard to deal with. You can't, they need individual care. You can't you can't expect to have a disruption like that all the time, and that's really a disservice to the other students, don't you think? You
Oh,
can't teach them.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, some of these students need a lot more support than they can be given in a traditional school setting environment.
Yeah.
I was talking, our art teacher got bit yesterday. So it's like, yeah, some students need the kind of support of like some sort of institution.
Do you worry about school shootings?
It's not really on my mind, which is a little bit funny because we had 2 shootings last year. But,
wow.
It did happen. The story behind them is not quite as serious as it made it sound. I mean, one of them was just random bullets came in through a window of a classroom. Thank goodness the class was not in the room at the time. And the school district has taken some precautions to try to prevent that from happening again. But really, I mean, if there's random shots that, it's impossible to completely protect from coming in through the windows, all the time. But I mean, it's really not on my mind. Yeah. I mean, it is an elementary school, and kids bringing weapons to school is not unheard of. But
right.
On a risk analysis, dying in a school shooting, I think is a pretty rare,
Yeah, I mean, when you're in that teacher and you're in the trenches and the grind of every day teaching 5 days a week. I assume you did 5 days a week. Then it's like, you don't think about such thing. You just go on from day to day and get on with it.
Yeah,
and do it. Carrie says it must be so scary sending your kids to school worrying about someone showing up with a gun.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Has there ever been a school shooting in an elementary school? And my school only goes up to 4th grade. So,
yeah.
I guess, yeah, of course, there have been school shoot outsiders coming in. Of course, but yeah, I don't think about it. It's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to get on with it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you juggle? Take us through a day, Jason, of how you write and teach. I mean, and how your family and everything. How do you juggle your week? How do you do it all?
Yeah. I think it probably pretty similar to a lot of writers. I mean, after work, settle down, have dinner with my wife, and then after dinner, I say, tell me when you're ready to relax. I come down here, basement, write or do whatever is required. Because like now, with my mind on promoting Interplanet, it'd be very difficult to focus on actually writing something. So, do whatever writing sort of activities I need to be doing, and then hopefully for at least a good hour, maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours of working on that, and then afterwards 8, 9 o'clock, watch TV until it's time for bed. So basically, try to cut out an hour, 90 minutes or so after dinner to write. If you really care about getting words on the page or getting something done, you can do it. It's challenging.
Yeah.
How about you?
It takes you probably have to have some time to kind of clear your mind and download from the day's events, right?
For sure. But one of my biggest pastimes, one of my things I do the most is walk, and I walk to and from school. So that is and I take a roundabout route home. So that's like an hour walk home, and so that's pretty good about that's really great for clearing your mind. So by the time I get home, have dinner, ready to go, sit in front of the computer for an hour or so. Hopefully,
it's kind of like mowing the yard. I find that very meditative, although I don't do it anymore. But if I had a riding lawnmower, or, even a push mower, you just kind of get in your own head, your own space, and the good thing is, you're old enough, Jason, to have had life experiences. So you probably by now, hopefully, it's unfortunate some of these people out there, they live 80 years and they've they've fritted away their whole life. I swear, when I look at some of these, you know, frustrating old people that haven't learned a damn thing in their whole life, to be quite frank. And it's like they're still very childlike. I don't know, they've not matured past 6, it seems like. And it's frustrating to see that. It's like, what have you been doing your whole life? I like a well-seasoned person that's been around the bend, and has some experience in their life, and then can pass on
and learn from those experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And for a writer, that's invaluable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now tell us about some of your other work, your novels and things. Have you got like some specific titles you can tell us about and kind of brief synopsis, or you got some of them there handy on the? It's got to be rewarding to look back here and go, yeah, I did that. I wrote
right. Yeah.
Because you've written how many books?
Well, I've written a couple of books, but they haven't been published. But most of my output has been short stories, and they have been in some small markets. They're upstairs, the magazines, the contributor copies, which is the markets I've been accepted to. The contributor copy is pretty much the main source of payment for the story. So, but yeah, that I was in a pretty cool anthology. I mean, this is over 10 years ago. I think it was called Grindhouse. It might have been maybe around the time the movie Grindhouse came out. So this editor took the idea, and I put a story about. I contributed a story about a guy going to a funeral of a summer camp friends from 20 years earlier, and finding out that there's something really creepy about the deceased's friends and family. And the funeral becomes sort of a horror show. That comes to mind because I don't know. That was it was kind of cool being in a real book. That I think if you look for it on Amazon, if you enter Grindhouse on Amazon, you have to go down a few pages, but it is actually there still. So.
Yeah, I've enjoyed a couple of the Grindhouse movies, that came out. I was unaware of sort of the Grindhouse type stuff till it actually got a disc. One of them was with Kurt Russell in one of the stories. That took me back to like 70s exploitation movies, sort of drive-in movie fare. Movies,
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to go to a drive-in theater, Jason, when you were younger?
Yeah. The drive-ins are one of those magical things, and probably my best drive-in story is I don't even remember this. My parents told me this. I guess as a kid, my parents would go to drive-in movies once in a while and put me in my pajamas and wrap me up in blankets and stick me in the back seat. And I guess my parents went to see Straw Dogs when that movie came out.
Uh-huh.
And, there's the scene where, like Dustin Hoffman opens up the closet and the pet cat is like hanging from a noose inside the closet because, they're being terrorized by these locals. And my parents said, they were nervous. They're like, oh my God, I hope Jason didn't see this. And they turn, and I was kind of like sitting in between the two front seats going, kitty, kitty. So.
Oh, wow.
So I,
whoops.
Yeah. So, going to a drive-in is great. I've done it a few times as an adult. I mean, the town I lived in New York City or New York State had one. I remember seeing the Flintstones movie there. So none local to Philadelphia, but
growing up, I had one that was probably 5 or 6 city blocks away from my house. if you came out of the back of my neighborhood, it dead ended right into the back of the property.
Oh, nice, nice, yeah.
So we used to just have like 1,000 ways to get in for free. You know,
Yeah.
we would just sneak in through all the trails in the back and stuff. I spent, I don't know how many summers I was there almost every night, just watching movie after movie.
Oh, fantastic! Those, yeah, that must be great memories.
Yeah, it's the property is still there now. I drive by it every now and again, but like all the theaters are gone. They turned it into like a storage facility type thing. It's like
Yeah, I mean, I think the birthplace of the drive-in movie theater is just across the river from me in Camden, New Jersey.
oh wow, I had no idea.
I think that's where the first drive-in movie was.
No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I miss those. I guess the closest we have to them now is IMAX. So tell us a little bit your spiel for the book here.
So
your main character is called Felix.
Yes, he arrives on the planet Demiad, which that's a picture of it there, and that's like one of the sort of Lovecraftian inspired aspects of the book. There's not too much, but for guidance for Alan when he's asking me for guidance, how do you want this to look? I looked up pictures of R'lyeh, the city that Cthulhu sleeps in at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. I used some pictures of those for inspiration. So yeah, Felix comes to this planet with military secrets from his own planet, Mangala, and he says he wants to share them with the government of Demiad, which the planet is ruled by evil sorcerers.
Yeah, kind of a medieval setting.
Right, medieval. That this is their transportation. The good guys ride hawks, the bad guys ride flying dinosaurs. Very primitive, and he spends a year on this planet. He shares military secrets with them, but they don't quite take him into their heart. They don't quite believe him. They're a bit suspicious of him until finally something mysterious explodes in the atmosphere of Demiad, which kind of sets.
Is this the cover here, or is that in here? That's the cover.
That's
okay.
The cover. Tony Tyler did a fantastic job. I think that cover is just a great selling point.
I wasn't sure because it looks like it's signed by someone else. He didn't sign it.
Well, yeah, the interior is by Alan Otero, and he goes by both. I mean, I think he's Russian, so I think his birth name is Anton Taralov.
Yeah,
but his email
that's what
address
I was
is and so his email address is Tony Tyler, and so I tend to think, and I think like his social media is usually Tony Tyler, and so so seeing him signed by Anton Taralov, it's a little confusing. But
how did you draw this international team together? I mean, he's Russian. Wow.
Yeah, I was very excited to have people from all over, and Leonardo, the colorist, I think is in Spain. So that it just it just happened naturally. You might be familiar with the artist Renzo Rodriguez.
Okay.
I
almost get like a John Carter of Mars type thing going on here.
Cool. Yeah. I wasn't thinking of pulpy kind of stuff when I was writing it, but I love it. And just because you're not thinking about something doesn't mean it's not affecting you or influencing what you're doing. So for sure, want to capture some of that spirit of sci-fi pulps, action, adventure, and some thrills, and Yep. Just
And
try to tie it
romance,
all
huh?
together in a nice package. There is some romance while our hero
Mm-hmm.
is on Demiad. He meets a woman from a barbarian underclass. They have been made into second-class citizens by the evil wizards who rule the planet now.
How
And so
dare they?
he they get married, and that is all a part of the plot.
I think you've got the simplest campaign. Buy the book, $7.
For sure, that was on purpose. I mean, I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
I have no name recognition. I don't really have promotional skills. The thought would make it simple as possible, make as few things that I can mess up.
31 pages of story, and then the rest is like, I mean, what do you know the final page count?
Yeah, it's 32 pages. The
32
story
pages.
came out to 31 just because I'm an idiot and I think I misnumbered
Yeah, well,
the
I mean, you got
strips
to
and
go by
stuff.
fours in printing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was probably aiming for 30, and because I misnumbered something, it came out to 31.
Yeah. Well,
And
you
I
can always
figured,
put a pin up in or something, or an
right.
ad
Well,
for your next thing. Is there going to be a sequel?
I sure hope so. I mean, the economics of the whole thing are very scary. But yeah,
Yeah.
the 30-second page is coming next issue, and waiting on that. I hope that will come any day, and we can go start printing. But yeah, the idea was to create a world. This is just the introduction.
Yeah.
I think the storytelling possibilities for this universe are, almost unlimited. I've written some more issues, which I'm going to go back and rewrite them. But there's definitely, I would love to see there to be an issue too.
So I kind of
I think
get
there will be.
the intrigue part of it, but I mean, here you are, you're kind of like jamming on spy stuff of late, and yet this isn't spy stuff. It's got the intrigue going on,
Yeah,
between the different factions.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm not explaining it well enough, or maybe it becomes more apparent in issue 2.
Okay.
Because I don't want to give too much of the plot away.
Yeah.
That's also part of it.
Right.
So yeah, there's
a fine line at how much do I give away.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard give it all away.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're a nobody. People need to know enough, and I get that. I really do. And it's I've had to kind of ease myself and give away and give away and give away more and more of it, without some of the finer points. And I think once they get it delivered in their hands, visually, it's going to be different than what they expected anyway. So
right. Yeah.
I'm not that worried about it. Now major spoilers, I don't do that,
Yeah. I mean, getting the book into people's hands is the most important thing. But I don't want them to get
product in hand, and then you could do local conventions, smaller to larger, or you could do. I mean, you could put it on eBay. I'd done eBay for about 20 years, so that's an option for me. Or like Shopify or Etsy or something like that. You've got product in hand that you can sell. That's passive income, something you've already printed. So I think that's really good. I try and shoot for about 25% overprint. Now, maybe not everybody's willing to do that. And how do I get that? Ethan Van Sciver with Cyberfrog just said 25% at one time. I was like, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
If it works for him, it'll work for me, and maybe that's, I mean, if you get stuck with a few issues, hey man, I mean, these print runs aren't that large anyway. If you print 20,000, that's zero. That's nothing in comics, really. I mean, that's beyond I mean, at one point when you were reading them as a kid in the 80s, 20,000 or 60,000 was cancellation numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because they were doing like X-Men, $250,000 or $500,000. They were doing big numbers. Just regular issues were almost like 190,000 in the mid 80s. The true last, I think, selling in the millions was by Dale in the early 60s.
Yeah.
some of their long time running Disney stuff. But
Oh, really?
you know, I don't really count the bubble market of the Image. I mean, certainly with the X-Men book, you know, they sold 6 million of that, the interlinking Jim Lee cover that they did. And
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
there were big numbers, but you know, I don't know if we'll ever see numbers like that again. It seems like everything's in manga now with comics. Hey, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and as a school teacher, I'm around kids a lot, and I see what's on their backpacks and stuff. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you see manga for sure, anime, a lot, and that's a world I just never been a part of.
Pokemon and Dragon Ball
Pokemon is
Z.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Ray joining us from Australia. Kate's from Orlando, Florida. Carrie's from the UK. Katie's from the UK. So we've got quite a international sect here watching you today.
awesome.
And all over the US, of course. So you're getting your
Fantastic.
message out worldwide. How's that feel, Jason?
Oh, it feels amazing. It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank Al Gore for inventing the internet.
Thanks, Al.
Loser.
Hopefully the world lasts long enough for me to fulfill my campaign.
I know it's crazy out there, isn't it? Why you don't flee the city? I get it. The city's got so much to offer, but I mean, oh God, I just don't think I could live in a large city nowadays. It's just too, I mean, yeah, I love the museums. It's the old adage, great place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to keep my sanity,
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I are in a different mindset. We came here from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we really wanted to have the big city experience. And I think we've had it. And I think we've done really good. We both found good jobs here in Philadelphia. I think we've had that experience. And now I think we are ready for a different sort of environment. But, you get trapped by jobs and with your jobs, with your pension and everything. We bought our house at a fantastic time. The housing market wasn't that hot. It was still, after the bubble had exploded and mortgages we got, a very good mortgage rate. And so if the right opportunity comes up, we might move out of the city. But I mean, there are a lot of compensations. We have friends here. We have a lot of stuff to do.
Right now you're almost stuck. I mean, I would wait till after the election for sure, because if you've got a low, you can't beat owning your own house. That's a great thing about, I own my own house, don't have to pay a mortgage, don't have to deal with all that. But a lot of people do. I get it. And it's right now, if you're locked into like 2-3%, that's gold. You don't want to mess with that. They've almost got you locked in where you can't move.
It was back when we were in Albuquerque and poor and working our butts off just to have any sort of recreation. But we also had freedom, like Bob Dylan says, or a lot of songs that say about just we had the freedom to just
but your cost of living was much. I mean, yes, in the city you're earning more, but your cost of living is more. There in Albuquerque, you're not earning as much, but your cost of living is less, I assume.
It's tricky, because I mean our transportation costs here are almost zero, whereas if you live in a place like Albuquerque, you got to have 2 cars. So it's algebra. It's very tricky. There's all different ways. I mean, taxes here, are high, but then again, property taxes are low in Philadelphia.
Spoken like a true teacher. It's algebra.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors going into it.
So, $100 goal is unrealistic. It's going to take you more than that to publish the book, of course. I mean, you're already out some money paying artist, colorist, whatever. I mean, you saved on the writing. Did you go into this thinking I'm not going to recoup that on the first book, but I'll sort of snowball and get my following for it? And or what was your thinking on that?
You nailed it. I figured to get people interested in this, I got to get the book in their hands. I think if people read it, they'll want to see issue 2, and plus also then I can have once I've got this campaign under my belt, I can think of additional tiers, additional things to add on, which I did not even want to deal with any of that stuff. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. And if we can go ahead with issue 2, then I would love to see, more tiers. Definitely.
I think one thing that helps is if you get a sign up, they say sign up, put a sign up, and link it to the campaign, and then have kind of a build up where people can and then once you hit, like, I want at least 50 people to sign up that's interested, or 100, once you hit that mark, then you launch,
all right.
Because people, and then you can say free bookmark or some, bookmarks, trading cards aren't that much, to publish. So, and they're flat, they're not going to add to the weight. You can very easily send them with your book. And, I just think that, if you have like a incentive to sign up, hey, if you sign up and you back the book, you get this free tchotchke. I think that helps,
I love bookmarks. That is something I would love to do with my second campaign. I've even toyed with the idea, maybe just sneaky doing it, printing up some bookmarks and just sending them out as an extra prize for anyone generous enough to
I pivoted with my own book. I wanted to come out with Devil Flyer, and I was like, I need some more time. So I said, what can I do now? And I crowdfunded an ash can, and at the end of it, I did the bookmarks, I did the magnets, I did the trading cards, the promo cards. And so, it seemed like a proper campaign. They
cool
got the
idea.
book, and they got the tchotchkes, and there weren't stretch goals. I didn't have to worry about changing up the campaign. Frankly, I didn't want to do that either, but I did add some stuff that people, that they got bookmarks that had some artwork on it, and other stuff. And I think everybody kind of liked that,
I bet. Yeah.
And then it's great to see them on X, on Twitter, showing like, this is what I got, the book. And then they lay all that stuff out around the book. It's just something satisfying about that. Of course, the most satisfying thing, right, is having the book in hand and going, wow, I published this. This is mine. This would not exist if I did not make it.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, that is certainly something I've had on my mind, as this has been a very expensive project, and sometimes I think, am I crazy doing this? But then I think, I will have a really awesome comic book, something that looks like it could have been produced by Marvel or DC back in the 80s. And at worst comes to worst, I'll have that. I'll have that going for me.
Well, I mean, you can always put that in your resume, right? Teacher, novelist, comic book creator. I mean, no one really goes into comics to make money, Now, Eastman and Lord did with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they wouldn't have become millionaires if they didn't market and get a manager to get that Hasbro deal, to get that animated, comic show in the 80s. I mean, it really takes a business manager at some point, and I would say most people that are even professionals in comics, they're not business oriented. Now, some are. People, you have to take everybody on an individual basis, but
sure, Todd McFarlane, I would say.
Oh yeah, he's very sharp. Yeah. Now,
so
there's some that's not so much.
I'm sure. Yeah. Creative people use a different part of their brain than the business people.
And I don't know if you've experienced this, but if you ever had trouble over on Fun Main Comic. You can go to Luke. You can call him, Luke Stone, who was one of the founders of the platform. You can talk to him anytime. You know, he's got admin that help him. In fact, my campaign, I had one of his admin that did Chrome Dog, that's over there on Fun My Comic. Justin helped me put together mine, you know. Otherwise I couldn't have, you know, done it. I'm not one of those tech wizards. I couldn't even done as much as you did. It would have been a real slog, and I don't like that. I would rather hire it done. You know, I'm the ideal man. I'm the concept guy. You know, let's get it done type guy. But yeah, I've had fun with that, and they're very personable. I think you struck gold when you hit Fund My Comic. And there's usually not the problems that you have with the big two. It's a smaller platform, but I think that's changing. You know, I think you know, you give them a little bit of time, and they'll make a pretty good platform out of this. You know, I mean, they're doing gangbusters now, but you wait a couple years and see how big they are. They've got almost 100 campaigns going now.
Yeah,
which is awesome. You know, and it's children's books, it's gaming, it's not just comics. Yeah, but if you ever have a problem, you can get them on the phone. If you try and get somebody over on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, you're just lost.
Right?
Yeah, we'll get back to you.
I can imagine. Yeah,
and there's been some shadow banning of some projects for whatever reason. And
I've heard those stories, and that helped you know, me make my decision to go with Fund My Comic for sure.
Yeah. Now I get it. There's a certain, you know, that people are different. They're like, I only do Indiegogo. Okay, well, you've lost the sale there. But now some have thrown, you know, once the shadow banning and things that Kickstarter was doing, you know, the cloning of campaigns and things like that. They were actually cloning campaigns. They would like take your campaign and put it up on Kickstarter without you knowing it and collect money from it. And you would have to catch it and go, wait, that's not me. This is a scam, you know? And eventually,
that's insane.
Huh?
That's insane. I can't believe they were.
I know it's insane. But fortunately we had somebody within, you know, fraud division that also makes comics, and he kind of put the heat on them and actually got some people on it, and they got all that stuff stopped. But then the shadow banning started, and you know, it's crazy. You know, it's I you know, the reason it's taken me so long to do a comic is it's a daunting task. There's a lot to it. You got the art, you got the inking, you got the dialogue, you got the written story, you got the coloring. If you've got color, you got, you know, to have cover artists, you got to have an interior artist, you got to set all this stuff up, the typeface and everything. There's a lot of decisions. I mean, it's like a Hollywood production in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
and especially what you're doing, you want this slick, top of the line graphic, not or whatever comic look, just like Marvel or DC would put out. You know, you're trying to make it look professional as possible, and that ain't easy. That takes some time, doesn't it? How long have you been working on this project?
A long time. The artwork has been taking a while to come through. So it's been years. I wrote this script years ago, so it's been a long process. It can be difficult to keep your enthusiasm up when it takes, you know, such a long time. But now that we're in top gear and we're, you know, we got the campaign going, now I can focus on it and keep my enthusiasm up. You know, as a writer, I would love to just be sitting at a typewriter or computer, just typing and then, you know, sending off manuscripts and getting checks back from the publisher. But that's not the world we live in. Right. And you know, it's a challenge to do all these things you're talking about, to assemble a team and put all, you know, have all these moving parts going that you've got to supervise. But I mean, what the hell?
and have them commit to so many pages. And if you want consistency in the book, you want that artist back again, but they may be unavailable. They have to make a living, and they may go on to some other project. So it's very, hard to get somebody to commit to, and some of these crowdfunders, frankly, blow my mind, Jason. 100 pages, 300 pages. Wow. I mean, 200 pages. They're huge, and I'm like, man, I'm having trouble just getting a 48 pager out,
Yeah.
There's a lot to
it. Yeah.
Ray says, my crowdfunding plugin is done, so folks can also host their own campaigns. Kate says, congratulations, Ray. Yeah, that doesn't, he builds websites and stuff like that, but more than that. But he's in Australia. He's in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love meeting new people, Jason. I hope you'll come on again, sometime, and not only talk about this, but comics in general. What was your jam growing up? DC, Marvel, independent, what?
I mean, I'd go to summer camp as a kid, and the counselors were like heroes, and I remember telling them about Marvel comics. DC seemed, very square to me at that time. And I remember this counselor just being like, oh, no, you got to, the good stuff is at DC. You got to read Teen Titans and Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Now, I can't George Perez, I can't, he's the one that got me into comics. I can't argue with that.
100%. Yeah.
And Teen good Titans writing, Marv Wolfman writing, just so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those were
great. They were like Chris Claremont and John Byrne and Terry Austin, on X-Men.
Yeah.
When you get a writer and an artist that just, that's gold.
Legendary. Yeah. Those they were just amazing.
So did that make you a DC guy?
Yeah. Yeah. And going from that to, Alan Moore, Frank Miller, of course, came over with Dark Knight.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I usually get a chuckle out of that when I kick you backstage. He's like, oh, well, is it over? Dangerous game I'm playing, folks. I'm primarily a Marvel guy, but now I definitely follow like Perez over, and I was reading Justice League, and I mean, his just, not just him, but other stuff too. But I was primarily more into the Marvel universe because it seemed like to reflect the more real world to me, like New York City instead of Gotham. Now, I don't slide either universe, but I kind of like the element of, Spidey having problems. He needs to pay Aunt May's rent, and he can't make it down to the store to get a loaf of bread without being attacked by Green Goblin. There was something appealing to that to me. I don't know. I just kind of got in, but I read both. I didn't really discriminate. I read what I found the most interesting. And, certain artists like Perez, I would follow him wherever he went.
Absolutely. And I should point out, I also was really big on Dave Sim Cerebus. That was that was probably my favorite. That was quite an eye opener. That kind of storytelling, the fantastic artwork, the independent spirit. Got Canadian guy just writing and drawing his own.
Did you ever see like early independent stuff like ElfQuest?
A little bit. I had friends who were really into ElfQuest at the time. And
Cerebus and others independent stuff kind of showed you what comics could be apart from like just sort of what Marvel and DC was doing, right? Yeah. Because I mean, you can talk, I mean, there's many genres, right? There's war, there's romance, there's horror, there's superhero, there's sci-fi. There's many genres that you can do comics about. you know, or any combination of both, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love the classic superhero comic book, and that's probably most of what I read. But
Me too.
Interplanet does not have superheroes in it, and for some reason, I never write about superheroes. I don't know why. It's just my mind doesn't work that way. So
yeah. I I talked to somebody recently, and he said that one of the two genres he thinks going to take off in the next 5 years is the sort of the fantasy adventure, which is kind of like your book. He feels like that's the barbarian, you know, fantasy adventure type stuff is going to grow. And I can't remember what the other genre was, but that one stuck out to me. You know, I was like, really? Okay. And you do see that a lot with Conan becoming public domain in the UK. And
oh, really?
I know Russ and Randy Zimmerman through Arrow Comics has just finished their Fund My Comic book about Kull the Conqueror. And I saw recently they had over a dozen titles of Conan out there now. So maybe it's making a comeback. You know, maybe we, you know, I think the fantasy type, you know, Lord of the Rings and Dragon Slayer and, you know, movies like that will never go away. I think that's always a lot of people like to cosplay that type of stuff too. That's, you know, I call it. I think Frank Frazetta probably brought that and the Dungeons and Dragons sort of genre single-handedly. Just, I mean, through his paintings, just really created this whole new genre that wasn't explored.
Yeah.
And really brought to visualization. You know, it was out there in book form like Lord of the Rings, but it hadn't been visualized. And then have Frank Miller visualize it in such a strong way, you know, created this whole new genre very early in the 70s, you know, late 60s, 70s, that's still here today and bigger than ever. So I think I want Flash Gordon back. Yeah. Well, he's 90 years old this year. Flash Gordon is.
Wow.
Yeah. I was watching Flash Gordon Goes to Mars, Jason, and I had an epiphany because he dressed up and I said, that's Aquaman. Because he's blonde haired. It's in black and white, but he's blonde haired. You know, Buster Crabbe was an Olympic swimmer and it looked like his outfit. I said, I bet you that they used Buster Keaton like we often do with celebrities, right? I have a character called Lady of the Night that's based on Ava Gardner. And you know, and I said, cool. I bet that's where they got Aquaman from. It makes, you know, because Johnny Weissmuller, his friend, was an Olympic swimmer. Buster Crabbe was an Olympic medal winner. And it just makes sense, you know, that they based Aquaman on a swimmer, you know, and his look. And I just saw him with the gloves on and the costume. And I was like, in one of the scenes as he's getting ready to battle someone. And accept the challenge. And I said, wow, that looks like Aquaman. And it just hit that they probably used Buster Crabbe, you know, to create Aquaman.
Absolutely. Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah. Watch Flash Gordon Goes to Mars. And when he's getting ready to duel his friend, he doesn't know his friend because he's got a mask on. Baron, what's his name? That Timothy Dalton played in the new Flash Gordon movie in 1980. You know, one of the tree guys or whatever. Baron, what's his name? I can't remember, but they duel. The outfit that he puts on, he puts these gloves on, and you know, Aquaman had the gloves on, you know, when he was first created. His color scheme was a little bit different. You know, he didn't have the green, he had like yellow gloves on, but the Golden Age. But he was always kind of a secondary character to the 60s. But it makes perfect sense to me. I was like, wow, man, I think I've really discovered something here. And you know what? It's probably in print somewhere. If you talk to the creator, I don't even know who created. Probably Sheldon Moldoff or somebody. I don't know who created Aquaman, actually. You know.
No, it's great when you find some little connection like that. I see people. I love George Lucas. People criticize him a lot. They say, "Oh, he ripped off this, he ripped off that," and I feel like I'm constantly seeing things that I think influenced George Lucas. I'm saying someone in some in Ultraman, the Japanese TV series, they're wearing a costume. I'm like, that's just like the rebel pilots at the end. The outfit the rebel pilots wore and stuff. And I don't think of it as a bad thing. It was amazing how he was able to take all these old concepts and assimilate it into something that was
Jack Kirby's Dark
popular.
Side.
Of course,
Jack Kirby's Dark Side character was an influence on Darth Vader.
Of course, yeah. Apocalypse.
And I like that he, I love the commentary disc, the behind the scenes stuff, and he and Spielberg both love to study silent films. Yesterday, I had on Charlie's London talking, celebrating Charlie Chaplin's 135th birthday, and I mean that's where movies came out of, and so much culture, and not to. And I think the scariest horror movies like Nosferatu, I mean, with that German expressionism, scary stuff when you're sitting there all alone and it's quiet, and it's just scary stuff if you really get into it. But unfortunately, a lot of people say, oh, it's so old and they don't even talk and it bores me and I go to sleep. You've not seen some great endings like City Lights. You've not seen some of the great movies ever made. I mean, 10 Commandments by Cecil B. DeMille, Ben-Hur. I mean, there was some Cleopatra. There was Sign of the Cross, which that's a talkie, pre-code talkie. But, I'm glad to see that they are students of film, even though they're older, accomplished filmmakers. They still enjoy film and its history. Because I think that you have to be, if you're going to make comics, you have to be a fan. If you're going to make a movie, don't do it just to make a movie. Be a fan of movies. I think the best writers are readers. They're fans. Of writing and reading, and they're fan. The best filmmakers are fans of film. The best comic book makers are fans of comic books. I think you almost have to be. That's your passion. Otherwise, you're just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, I think of someone like Sergio Leone, who made those, the great spaghetti westerns that are so huge and influential,
and the only ones that really made any money out of the Italian film. I mean, those were the only ones that Fistful of Dollars More, and Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Those were, I mean, in the Trinity series, maybe a little bit, but I don't think that was Leone. But I mean, most of that, they made a ton of stuff out of Italy, of those spaghetti westerns, and yet none of them made any money except
they made
the Leone stuff.
It became a big industry.
Yeah. And you pew, 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 in American movies, and then boom, like a cannon going off in Italian films, man. It's just big difference, and the violence, I think, I mean, Sam Peckinpah, he was pushing the envelope, with the violence part, in the 60s.
And I mean, I don't know as much about Sam Peckinpah, but even though, the Leone westerns are considered revisionist and whatnot, so they were so great because Leone loved the old westerns. He didn't just come in and say, "Oh, I'm going to do something way better than these old movies." He loved them, and he wanted to do his own twist on it, not just completely disregard the whole history.
That was kind of like De Laurentiis, movies. He's like, I'm going to make it bigger and better than ever. We get Flash Gordon 1980, which is kind of like a rock opera. We get, another one he did, and I did not know this, I don't know if you saw the solar eclipse, but when they filmed Barabbas, which is a wonderful movie, if you've not seen it, with Jack
No.
Palance. Man, you need to watch that. That was a best-selling book in the 50s. Barabbas. It was like what happened to Barabbas after the crucifixion, acted by Anthony Quinn.
All right.
And in there when he's hanging on the cross, he waited weeks and held up the movie so that they could get the real solar eclipse.
Holy moly.
That's a real solar eclipse in Barabbas.
Yeah. Wow.
Check that movie out. You can probably watch it on YouTube.
All right.
Everybody should go watch Barabbas at least once. It's longer, like one of those Ben-Hur 10 Commandments type epics, but the robe. But it's, oh man, it's good. That one slipped under my radar for a long time, but it was a best-selling book in the 50s. New York bestseller, and that's when it really meant something. I think it's it's disingenuous, the thing, if you're not politically, it's been politicized. There's not anything nowadays, Jason, that's not been politicized. Even comics.
Yeah. Comic books. Doctor Who is another one.
Carrie's going off to sleep. Her meds are kicking in. Well, Jason, I thank you, and thank your wife for your time with us. I appreciate it. We usually go a couple hours.
Sorry, I was doing dinner prep, Jason, or I would have popped in more, but I didn't want you guys to hear all my chopping.
Okay. Shadowhawk, did you have something you wanted to ask Jason before we
No. I think you got it covered pretty well, Rex. Yeah, it's a beautiful book, man. The colors are nice.
Thank you.
Looking
we're going
to
play the trailer before we get out of here one more time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very gothic. Love it. It's like Dr. Phibes.
I heard this playing in a record store like 30 years ago.
And it caught your ear. Wow. Remember vinyl, folks?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think
Siding?
Vinyl has Go ahead, Shadowhawk.
I said vinyl siding? Yeah, I got some around the house.
Come on, man. How did you come up with the name Inner Planet?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's a story of two planets.
Okay.
It's a story of intelligence agencies. It's not in the first issue, but second issue moving forward, there's their version of the CIA in this world is called the Interplanet Group, and so I took the name from that.
Hello, Kate.
I'm sorry.
I was saying hi to Kate.
Yeah, in the chat. So how do you give a satisfying ending without just a direct cliffhanger? Because you're not publishing like Marvel or DC, and neither am I, on a monthly basis. How do you keep people's interest in the interim between issue 1 and issue 2?
Yeah, I definitely that was a part of my consideration of constructing this story. And I think there's a good stopping point. There is an exciting finish. It's not quite a resolution, but maybe a pause. Right. I think when people get to the end of the comic book, I mean, they will see that it's a good point to pause the story. There's a big action sequence, and it's finished, and we leave off at a good place to pick up in a while. Yeah. Issue 2.
So you probably are like me. You set situations up, and there's a payoff later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But nothing so big that it's like, oh yeah, I got to wait another year for the next issue. Something that leaves somebody, and then they got to go back and read it and kind of brush up. Because you do have to take that in consideration. We're not publishing on a monthly basis here, or even bi-monthly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they have to kind of be complete, satisfying story while still pointing to future events, right?
Yeah, and if I am successful in what I tried to do here, I think the reader will put it down satisfied with a complete story, or at least a complete chapter, a complete episode that has a satisfying ending. I tried to do that.
Well, Jason, thank you for coming on. Thank you for getting back with me. I can't tell you how many times I have to reach out to some people to get back. With Charlie's London, it took me over a year to get her on.
Really?
But now, she says she might come back up on Sunday. She had a good time. It's like, if I can hook you once and get you in here and you have a good time, it's a lot easier the next time. So
it was a good conversation yesterday. The last year or so, I've been very interested in film history, and the silent era is something that I need to know more about, and very ignorant on.
Oh, so you were lurking and listening, eh?
I was not live, but
on replay
on YouTube. Yeah. And I really appreciate that. It was a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, we've had people go off of here and go, wow, I just came off from Rex's show being grilled for 2 hours. So hopefully you don't feel that way. Only one guy, but it's T-Money. He doesn't.
Only one confirmed.
Only one confirmed, right? Yeah, they back DM groups and stuff. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, man. I hope you'll come back.
Thank you. You're very kind. I'd love to come back sometime. I've had a lot. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, we'll check in.
Jason.
We'll check in with you. We'll check in with you later and just see how the campaign's going, and try and get your name out there and more exposure. That's what it's all about. If we can't help each other in this endeavor, then it's maybe the human race does need to end. Anyway, keep collecting,
push
guys.
The button.
Thank you, chat. Yeah, push the button. Which one? The one that says nuclear apocalypse?
Yeah.